Welcome to another episode of the Humming Projector podcast. In the previous episode, we were talking about the Blackpool Convention. Today, we are going to talk about the British Film Collectors Convention. Normally, I would not have the same type of topic 2 episodes in a row, and I promised the next one will be about something different than conventions. But when Mark Williams, one of the organizers of the BFCC, approached me about the revival of this convention with a very long history, I simply just had to say yes. So with me today, I have said Mark Williams. It's really nice to see you again, Mark.
Hi, Elvin. Yeah, great to see you again. I think we last met at Blackpool, didn't we? If I can say the Blackpool word there. Yeah. So, yeah, great to see you.
And with Mark, we have his fellow organizer, John Clancy. We have never met before, John, but I have heard your name many times before, and it's a great privilege to have you here today.
Yes, infamy. They've all got it in for me.
You're notorious.
That's probably a better word.
So, welcome to both of you. I must admit that I have never been to the BFCC. I live in Norway, as you might know, and I have been to the Blackpool Convention 3 times, but I never got to be at the BFCC. But now I have a chance to learn a little bit more, I hope. And this convention will be in London in late April, and that's why we have this episode today with the 2 same topics, 2 episodes in a row, because I really wanted to get this on air in time for people to get interested in the convention and show up in a little bit more than a month. And this year's convention will be the 66th convention, and that's quite a history. Not many conventions could show up for the 66th event. So perhaps you could start with a little bit of the history of the BFCC. How has it been during the years?
Well, neither Mark nor I were there at the first one. I think I'm right in saying, Mark. That was 1976, and it was organised by Paul Van Summeren, who sadly died a few years after that first convention, Stephen Herbert, and Mike Smith and a few others. Patrick Malls, who did the Bring and Buy, at our last convention in 2016. He was there at the first convention, and I believe he did the Bring and Buy at the first convention. Keith Wilton was at the first convention, and he took over organising the BFCC, I believe, in 1980. But the first one was in 1976. It was a bit of a different format to what we have today, or what developed a few years after 76. And what we have today is not really what we're not going to be really doing the same thing that we did at our last one in 2016, where we were still about promoting the hobby and trying to keep the existing businesses going by showing their products. So it's not going to be so much about that, but that will still be a part of it. So we're going to have a new releases show. But the main thrust of this one is to just get everyone back together, have a social, enjoy film, and hopefully get our 24-foot wide screen in there. Might not be possible, so we paid the hall for the hire of their drop-down screen, which is between 16 and 18 feet wide, so it's not going to be too shabby, whatever we do. But the CinemaScope screen at 24 feet, if we can get that in there, even if we can't actually fill the whole of it, it's still going to be very nice to see again. And if this is successful, then we'll see what we do next year. We might have to find a bigger hall to fit that screening. I think that's a brief history of the summary. What do you think, Mark? Is there anything I've missed?
Yeah, no. I mean, it sort of gives a good sort of starter. I think I got involved at the when it was getting. It must have been the height of the hobby, about 1978. So probably the first one I went to was like the Rembrandt Hotel, because that was that a co-production, wasn't it? A Movie Maker.
Yeah, they got involved with that.
Yeah, and that was quite a swish hotel in where was it? Knightsbridge, wasn't it? I think
the Rembrandt Hotel. Yeah.
Yeah, so it had a nice carvery there. I remember as well. So that was my sort of probably must be about 78, I should think, 79. Then I went up to Blackpool. My dad took me up to Blackpool in 1979, so that shows you how long. I've been sort of involved with the hobby on and off, because I sort of got married along the way, in back in 1985, and had a few kids and things. So, but then I was all sort of hopped back really. Which is good, isn't it? It's a hobby. It's always there, which is great,
In 1976, that's roughly the same time when the Blackpool Convention started, and that's a really impressive history.
Well, the reason Blackpool started was because the BFCC started, and others thought this is a good idea. So the BFCC was undoubtedly the first.
And a good idea it was, as it has been continuing ever since in Blackpool and almost up to today for BFCC.
Yeah, there's been a bit of friendly rivalry over the years, and we were talking about it the other day, Mark, and we as much as it's been good fun, I don't think the hobby should have any rivalry anymore. So we're going to try and do more things together with the people who are now organising Blackpool, because between us we can maybe work together, build the hobby back up. And there are some developments in the hobby, Super 8 in particular. So anyone who wants to get into it now, it's not going to be cheap, but you don't have to have much on Super 8 for it to be tremendous fun, because whatever film gauge you run in the home, you're effectively playing at cinemas as they really, well, I was going to say really are, but as they really should be, because not many of them these days have got the ability to run film, even if the film product is available to screen. So Super 8, 16mm, and a bit of 35mm, whatever you go for in the home, you've got cinema in the home, as it should be.
Exactly. And the BFCC continued from 76 to 2016. What happened in 2016? Do you know why it was the last year in a while? I'm new to this. I actually don't know.
Well, we were waning, weren't we, really, Mark?
Yeah. It was, it was a bit of a struggle getting everybody through the door, wasn't it? I think that, back then as well, for sort of, because it was at Ealing, wasn't it? Was it in the last?
Yeah, it was at the school. What was the name of the school? Can't even remember the name of the school now.
It was the
St Benedict's. That's it.
Yeah, St Benedict's. Yes.
Yeah, and anyway, we would have been able to continue there for a few years, but the school started getting a national lottery grant, and they didn't really need us spending some money with them to hire their main hall and the gymnasium, I think it was, to put the dealers in. And so that was becoming increasingly difficult to get what we wanted from them. It wasn't the ideal location, but I'm sure most people who organise things around, well, anywhere in the Western world now, particularly the UK, everything is getting phenomenally expensive. And so we were effectively kicked out of the Ealing Town Hall when they suddenly thought, rather than getting £1,000, let's actually select who we have to hire our hall and go for weddings, and we can charge them £3,500. So we had a deal for the last one there, which was about, when was that? 2012. We had a last convention in Ealing Town Hall, and we said goodbye to that, but they let us have it for £1,500. So we were struggling to cover our costs holding that one. And then we got the cost down again by going up the road to St Benedict's Day School. But unfortunately, that was slightly out of Ealing Town Centre. So whereas the town hall was on the end of the Broadway, so people could go next door to the pub for lunch, they could go shopping in the town centre. I mean, for years there was an HMV, so it's a relationship. There was the ABC cinema opposite, which was a good focus to look out on, and the town hall itself to look at was beautiful. So we lost all that, and so it was a bit of a downer, really, although the venue we had at the school I think was probably better. It wasn't in as good a location, and so we had to take a break because we were on the wane, and I was getting a bit depressed about it because I wanted everyone to remember the BFCC as it was, which was undoubtedly the best film convention with the biggest screen, the best fun, and the best film shows, and lots of film shows. I mean, lots of film shows. And we did go in for video projection as well, but that was mainly with bespoke productions that Keith Wilton put together with Ken Lock. Now, sadly, Ken Lock has died, so we haven't got him to be one of the master of ceremonies and present shows and do talks. But Keith Wilton is still with us, and he's getting on a bit now. I think he's 85 now, is Keith. So he's been organising it, I believe, from 1980 up until 2016. And I did think he was getting a bit too old for this, a bit too stressed. And I thought, if I can move back closer to London, then maybe if we can find a way to promote the BFCC again, we can bring it back. And that's what Mark and I are trying to do. But Keith is going to be there as the master of ceremonies as usual. I'm going to be picking him up in the morning and picking him up and the screen, which we went in a couple of weeks ago to find the screen in various places in his loft, the speaker cables, and all these sort of things that you need to put on a convention that everyone else takes for granted. There is a mass of things you have to bring, and you need an awful lot of you to get it there, whereas Keith was doing it practically all himself with a bit of help from me.
He was up the top of the step ladders, wasn't he? I think, when he was in his 80s, he was at the top of the, on top of the stage, high stage, and then on top of step ladder trying to get the tabs right, wasn't he? That's what I remember. And if it had fallen, there was no safety net, was there?
Well, one time in the Ealing Town Hall.
Yeah.
One time in the Ealing Town Hall, we remember the Queen's Hall, where we had the smaller hall every 6 months because we had 2 a year.
Blackout, was that the blackout?
Well, we were in there on a Friday afternoon setting things up with a 24-foot wide screen with a colleague from work of mine, Agnello Garacino, got involved for quite a few years. We were in there. Keith was up this ladder. We looked round. We heard this almighty crash. It was Keith. Forgot he was up the ladder and he was straight down as it smashed. And it wasn't funny really because he dislocated his thumb. And he was saying, "Just pull it out, John, pull it out." And of course, I was on the brink of fainting with this thing. I mean, it wasn't quite an attack by a great white shark or anything, but it really did make us both feel a bit queasy, and we couldn't pull his thumb back in, so we had to take him to hospital. And that was all the day before the convention, and that was the sort of thing that would go on. That was a bit extreme, but we built a 30-foot wide screen once at the Northfields Odeon out of photographic studio paper, the background things that they used to sell, the different colours. Well, one of these shops, one of these dealers that sold this paper was just along the road from where I lived at Russell Square. And a friend of mine in my car club actually worked in there. So I went along and organised all this, and we had it all delivered to the Northfields Odeon. It was called the Top Hat Club then. And Keith and I, and my wife actually, and a few others, we worked through the night to build this enormous screen out of paper. And that, I think, is the biggest public screening there's ever been of Super 8. It was 34 feet wide. We had extracts from things like The Abyss. I think we had El Cid on there and a few other things. And it was quite sensational, but the projector wasn't really bright enough. And that's another development that's happened in later years. We've taken what you can do with Super 8 projection to the extremes. We've got the brightest projector in the country just for British Film Collectors Convention.
And now you touched on a subject that I've been interested in, and that is how much work it is to make a convention. I touched that subject when I talked to Simon McConaughey as well, because it's a lot of work, and many people perhaps don't think about that. And then I start to wonder, why did you choose to take it up again? Because you have said you had been a little bit tired of this after that many years. It's a lot of work, and we had the pandemic, and then suddenly many years has passed. So how did it come together that you decided, let's take it up again? Let's get it back into London. How did that come together?
Well, I think that's over to Mark for that one, because I don't know.
Yeah, well, there was. We'd made several sort of abortive attempts, didn't we? But I think we were going to go down to St Benedict Stall again, but there was various factors. I think one disastrous one was we booked the hall for a certain time, and it was actually the Ealing Marathon on that day, so it meant that the dealers would get it at 8, but none of the public would be able to get up to the main, up to the main hall or anything. or the school. So, and that was a bit of a disaster. Then I think the school, we're getting a little bit, I think they offered us half day or something, I think, at one point. So they weren't, obviously, clearly weren't interested. But, and then we saw, I suppose, really during the pandemic, wasn't it, John? We were speaking about it, and we said, no, we've got to, I think it's very much like, like a band wants to get back and play out and, get back to an audience, if you like. There, I mean, not saying we're Led Zeppelin or anything, but I think it's very much like want to get out there and get. It's nice to get the public together again, isn't it? Especially after the everybody been stuck in during the pandemic. So we made a few attempts, didn't we? I think, and it didn't really get. But we said no, let's wait until the things do improve, and thankfully they did. Yeah, everybody got jabbed, didn't they? I think here in the UK, it's probably the same in Norway, is it? With the probably even tighter, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Mark and I never stopped talking about the convention. I mean, we didn't speak regularly on the phone or anything, but the problem I alluded to earlier was that I'd moved out of London and was living in Cornwall, and it's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. So it was difficult to get back to London to help Keith to do anything. And I used to take my sound system in with my THX amp, the THX speakers, and so a lot of the equipment came from me, and it wasn't possible to do that from Cornwall. And so that became increasingly difficult as the years went on. And then in 2016, I was almost encouraging Keith to call it a day for a while, if not permanently, depending on what happened, because we had run out of ways to promote the convention. Yeah. Now, I think we're the only convention that actually had a full-time website. That was a serious website that my colleague Aggie started at work one day, and then I took it on when he moved on. So we had that, and that was a big help. People from all over the world started coming in, and I think that was a bit of a draw for it. They could see everything that we were doing, and they thought, I'll have some of that, and they came over, and it was brilliant. We had some wonderful visitors like Doug Meltzer from the USA, Paul Ladsett, Alan Rick. People are coming from a long way away on the globe. But we'd run out of places to advertise. There was a time the Virgin Megastore had our leaflets, and we had so many people coming to the evening town hall at that convention, we thought we were going to be shut down because it was so overcrowded. I think we had about 550, 600 people in. I mean, brilliant, but a bit frightening, really. So to bring this one back, it's a much smaller hall, but I thought if we could find a venue, and it was Graham Sinden, I think, recommended this hall because the 9.5 group were using it.
Yeah.
But I thought now I'm living closer to London because during the pandemic we sold up and moved to Calne in Wiltshire. And so we're only about 100 miles away from London, so it's a lot easier. But I thought, how are we going to promote it? And there was one thing I was speaking about when we went down to Cornwall first time was, how am I going to earn a living? So I had a few ideas. And the thing I ended up doing, I accidentally became a documentary filmmaker, which turned out to be quite successful. I've more or less learned that from Keith Wilton, because that was what he did with his film hobby. He made these documentaries about film collecting and film history. So I thought, well, if Keith can do it, and he's only had the training of the BBC, hasn't he? I'm sure I can do it. And so I'd learned all that side of things and been quite successful at it. And I thought, well, when I went to Cornwall, the idea was to do this documentary I've been thinking of, but then do something with our home cinema, perhaps. And of course, YouTube wasn't really going then. It wasn't the thing it is today, for sure. And so that was 2006. But when the pandemic hit and we had a letter from the government saying you've got to shut down this business, and by the way, you can't do this, you can't do that, and three aspects to our business, and they all got shut down for one reason or another. What on earth am I going to do now? So, for the first time in 15 years, I've got some spare time. I'll start a YouTube channel on film. And I thought, if it's successful, and I remember I told you, Mark, didn't I, that if this works, we'll have a way of actually promoting the hobby again, promoting the conventions. And that's what I did. And so the channel has been quite successful, and I've introduced or reintroduced a number of people to collecting real film. And let's give the convention a go.
How many followers you got now, John?
It's more than 20,000, so it hasn't gone badly.
Well, that's good, isn't it? And and even if you get a small percentage of people coming along, and there's a lot of other people, sort of non regulars, I suppose, that are interested on this one as well. And it's on the Metropolitan line, so it's very easy, I think, to get to, isn't it? Especially from London, isn't it? It's like now 40 minutes out, I suppose, isn't it?
So now we have heard a little bit how you are planning to start this again. what can people expect when they come? If they've never been there before, how would you, in short, describe the convention? What different part of the convention will they see when they come?
Well, film, and film. Hopefully we're sort of cross-promoting things here because we're going to run 35mm. We're running Super 8, of course. We've got Mark Norton with his souped-up HID Elmo coming along. So the guy that does Blackpool, so he does a superb job, presentation-wise. John, you're bringing your GS along, are you? I believe.
Yeah, which has got a new HTI lamp in it, which is even brighter.
Fantastic. And we're pushing 4K as well, because it's 4K is sort of struggling, I think, a bit in the UK. It's very specialised, and I think if we can, at least they can go out and buy. They can go. Well, if there is an HMV shop left near anybody, they can go out and buy or go online and buy a 4K. So I think it's important to show those sort of different formats, isn't it, really, on there? We're not showing any 9.5 or standard 8, I don't think, this time, but we can't please everybody, can we? Because there's purists that love them, don't they? So I think we stick to those formats, especially 35. I mean, it was fantastic at Blackpool, wasn't it? Again, seeing that portable 35 was amazing. It just fitted on a table. It was so heavy originally; it came from a submarine. So they had to take the flywheel out and replace it with a lighter one, because otherwise it was impossible. I think it took 3 men to lift it. But and that certainly gives 4K a run for its money, I think, on there. When you see and it's like the whir of the projector, isn't it, and the rattle of the film. I think people are sort of nostalgic for that as well. So I think we'd like to get the new people in who can buy the 4K or the digital guys. And also the purists, who love their real film, don't they?
Will there be dealers there as well?
Yes, we've got, how many dealers? 13, I think we've got.
I think it's 13 books and about 20 tables between them.
Yeah, right. And as you said, Keith Wilton will be there as well.
That's it, yeah. He's got a new bow tie, I believe, and he's ready to go, and his tuxedo, but. Without Keith, it wouldn't be the BFCC. Same with John, really. So it's.
And I will, when I was talking to Simon about the Blackpool convention, what really came back to me again and again is that the people is perhaps the most important part of the conventions. So we come to enjoy the films, but we enjoy them together with other people. Yeah. So when I saw the name of Keith Wilton, I thought about how important he would be for the convention. I haven't been there, but I heard his name so many times.
Definitely.
And I also watched the video made by Stuart Hilliker that he made it from 2016. Very good video that gave me a little bit of an impression of how the convention was, and I will link to that video in the show notes, so you can watch it as well.
It's quite now these days. It's quite similar to Blackpool, I'd say. It's certainly in spirit. Obviously they want to show as much film as possible, and very similar. With the dealers, and but we've got some special shows lined up, and. There's new releases. I think Lee Mannering's going to do Durand Films, isn't it? Durand Films, is it? Have I pronounced it right? He's going to do it because Lee's just amazing. He's just been pushing these releases out.
Uncle Lee,
get something new on the big screen is just fantastic. Even though it might be digital sourced, I mean, it's just great to get it out there. I think, isn't it?
And we are a special bunch, I guess, those of us who collect film, and the community isn't that big. Together we are many people, but most people don't know that many people around where they live. So these conventions are, I guess, pretty important. And what I like to see is what we briefly talked about earlier here, is that although there might be some friendly competition, I saw you, Mark, at the Blackpool convention, and I know Simon McConway plans to go to the BFCC, so you're also being very friendly to each other, and it's something that I really enjoyed seeing.
It's so important, It's a long way for me to go. I'm down in West Sussex, so I've sort of going from one coast up to the north. So it's a long, but it's you've got to support each other, haven't you? And I know people like Bob Nichols come. He never missed a show, has he? I don't think anything film related. They will, they'd be there, and you've got to support each other, haven't you? I think that's the. There's no longer any north and south divide, is there, John? I don't think.
No. Well, Adrian Winchester is doing a lot of the work for the Blackpool dinner, isn't he, on a Saturday night?
Yeah.
And he did a great interview up there, which thankfully was filmed with Jed.
No, that's superb. So, and we need to do part 2 if we get time. It'd be nice to get them sat down and doing a part 2. I don't think we'll have enough time, but and although I'd also like to mention we've got a very special Laurel and Hardy show with some of the most classic shorts. It's my friend, international rock star Spiz Ennis is going to present the show. So that's something that's never happened, is it? At a BFCC. And he's a bit of a character and a bit of a raconteur, so it'll be interesting to see, his introduction to things. A big Laurel and Hardy buff.
Yeah, it's going to be. We're going to be trying a few new things because Lee Mannering is putting I think you mentioned Mark's putting together his new releases on a show. Phil Sheard from Classic Home Cinemas. I've asked him to just put whatever you want to put on a show, Phil. We will put it on, and so he's going to do his own new releases show. We have got a lot of people from the film and television industry come to the BFCC, and a lot of the time you don't know it, but you get talking to some people there. I mean, Brian Murphy is our patron, and Brian's most recent gig was the Last of the Summer Wine, wasn't it, before it finished in the last few series.
He knows about this one, does he? Has Keith invited him? I hope he has.
Colin Clark, who is one of the team, really, he's been on to George, so he's hoping to come, So, but we got other people. I mean, one person I had to dig out his business card is David Hilton, who's a cameraman in the British film industry. And one of the things I always remember talking to him about was because he worked on shooting some of the special effects for Event Horizon. And you can just talk to these people and you just learn things that you never would have dreamt of.
Because we've got two Stewarts, two Stewarts, Stuart Hilliker and Stuart Reed are both professional film editors as well, so so it's great that they're coming along and
And they're both under orders. They've got to shoot videos for us.
Must be like a busman's holiday for them, mustn't it? Really, I think, But the more videos, the better. We like to get it out there, and but they're quite similar now. I think, certainly in spirit. I think Blackpool. There's nothing really. I mean, Blackpool back in 1978 was like the. I think when Keith went up to Bill Davison, who used to be the critic for Movie Maker, he was running the first convention, I think, wasn't he, in Blackpool? And it was all like, we use UMIGs up here, lad, wasn't it? I think, that sort of thing, wasn't it? And you mentioned an Elmo. Oh, I know some people don't like Elmos today, but you mentioned an Elmo, and that's it. You're out the door.
And in 1976, there were for sure no Facebook or forums for people to go to, so the conventions would be the place to meet other people. And today, when we have Facebook and forums and we can meet there, what do you think the place for conventions are now? How important is a convention like this in the age of forums and Facebook groups?
Oh, it's 100% important. You've got to. I think it's nice to have that, as John said about the. It's great, the website. So it's always there. You always know if they. If we decide to call it a day, then you go to their website. So it's nice people can check up, look at the next date, and I think it's important to get that. Have a physical presence, if you like, as well. As a sort of an online presence, really. And I think it's not the same. I mean, if I show films at home, it clears the room, everybody goes, but it's not the same. It's nice to run them for yourself, but it's if you get an audience, and I think I did a packed show in London a couple of months ago, and I was so pleased. It was only like a small room above a pub, but it's central London, but it's people loved it, and showing some old satellite, Tintoria, Killer Shark, and things like that. They loved it in Redneck with Franco Nero, but people loved it. And I think seeing these cut downs, these different cuts of films as well, I think makes it more fascinating, doesn't it? I think,
For those that haven't been listening now and think that the BFCC sounds really interesting, where and when will it be this year?
Well, it's at the Chorleywood War Memorial Hall on the 29th of April from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. and admission is only £5. There's a car park just across the little road there. with, I think, room for about 60 cars, but there's free parking elsewhere in the area, so it's not the end of the world if we get too many people there. But it's a lovely little location, and it's the part of the world where Midsummer Murders is shot. So anyone who thinks they're watching a village, it's just outside the M25. And the reason it's outside the M25, Mark, is...
Yeah, go on. You've got me there. Go on.
It's to avoid the congestion tax.
Oh, of course. Yes. Yeah.
And being within the city limits of London, it should be fairly easy to get there for people abroad as well.
It's straight on the Metropolitan line, so I think that's very easy, isn't it? I think, would you go from Baker Street, I think, something like that, is there, I think, on the...
Yeah, it's all that side of it. It's the first track in central London, isn't it? And it goes all the way out now, beyond Chorleywood to, is it High Wycombe?
Yeah.
It goes out that far, doesn't it?
So it's about half hour, 40 minutes, I suppose, 50 minutes max. Depends on
it's a lovely ride, actually.
Yeah.
And if people want to read more about the convention, where do they go to read more about the BFCC?
www.bfcc.biz. That's Bravo Foxtrot Charlie.biz, B-I-Z, or Z, as our American cousins say out in the colonies there.
We also put a lot of updates on the 8mm forum as well. That so obviously people ask a lot of questions, send messages and things. So we're always updating there, and we've got our own Facebook group as well. So it's the official British Film Collectors Convention on Facebook, and also my Bootleg Cinema group as well. So if anybody's there's probably not too many Facebookers, are there? There's a few, isn't there? A few film collectors, isn't there? Like Andrew
it's quite a lot,
people like that, But Graham Sindon, as you mentioned earlier on. So so we're trying to get out, spread the word, and hopefully people will make the effort to come along on the 29th of April.
Yeah, and then again, I recommend people that wonder how the convention has been previously to go and look at Stuart Hilliker's video. I'll link to that in the show notes. Do you have any last words before we wrap up?
I look forward to see everybody on the day. Please come and support it, because if nobody turns up, then we will have to call it a day, wouldn't we? But it'd be nice if people come along. We're running, so 35. Super 8mm 4K, so it caters for everybody. And there'd be various dealer stalls there, so you should be able to buy, hopefully get a few bargains, because there's always a good bargain, isn't there, at the BFCC. But Perry's coming, John, at all? Any news from Ian at all?
Ian should be coming. He won't have a dealer's table, but he's hoping to come along.
Which would be nice. So that's Ian O'Reilly, Perry's Movies, and and I think it's always people. There's always a good sort of, good sort of trade there, isn't there, as well? So so please come along. And
where else are you going to see 4K home video projection alongside 35mm home projection?
Yeah, definitely.
And hopefully it will be really crowded. A big thanks to you, Mark and John, for taking your time to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to follow us, you can listen to us and subscribe to our podcast using players like Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. You can also use any podcast player supporting RSS. Go to our website, hummingprojector.com, to learn how to subscribe. You can also listen to the current and previous episodes on our website without any additional software. If you have any feedback on this episode or a suggestion for future episodes, please send a mail to feedback@hummingprojector.com. And with this, we have reached the end of today's episode. My name is Eivind Mork, and thanks for listening.